Hi, my name is Laura Burgoyne, and I'm excited to be joining together with my sister Connie Blackwood in the NOSA Unleashed podcast. Here, we want to expose the stigma surrounding mental health issues by illuminating and discussing real-life challenges and obstacles, keeping us paralyzed and fearful to move forward. Let us inspire you to believe there's more to life than what you're currently experiencing. You can rise from your despair and find hope for the future. It's time to end the silence, remove the stigma of mental health, and to pursue the path to purpose and fulfillment. We will do this together because no one stands alone. Welcome back to the NOSA Unleashed podcast. I'm Laura Burgoyne, and I'm so excited to be here today to share this important topic. And, as many of you have noticed, Connie and I actually took a little bit of a break over the Christmas season. We actually took sabbaticals, and we took some time for rest and to refocus and, just get some stuff in our personal lives, in order and just have that time of rest. And so we are back. It's 2024. We're excited. And for the month of January, we've actually had a focus in our nonprofit and also on our webinar just about joy and how joy can be so elusive, and trying to bring more awareness to this, and how can we encourage and cultivate more joy in our everyday lives, and how can we pursue that. And so welcome, Connie, to the conversation. I'm so glad to have you here.
I'm glad to be here to join you for this.
First of all, I wanted to say, how was your sabbatical? I mean, it's been a while since we actually met together like this.
I was sick. So I had it was not what I expected for sure. I did get a lot of rest, but I didn't get the kind of rest I was expecting. So I got a lot of physical rest though, and I feel like I'm re-energized and stuff. Um, and I learned a lot of things about myself during that time, which I think was helpful. And it's giving me a different perspective on this year, actually. So, in the moment while I was going through it, I was like probably not as positive about it as I am now, I will admit. But the more that I reflect, the more I realize actually that time was good for me in a lot of ways. And so I'm thankful for it. How about you?
Well, that's awesome, Connie. I know that you were sick, and that's difficult to deal with, but just the fact that you felt like you had some personal growth and being able to reflect on some things, that's awesome. I love that. Well, for me, it was really hard to slow down. You know, my life does run at a million miles an hour, and so the closest thing I could get to being able to settle myself down and not feel like I had to be doing so much was my husband is a puzzler, and he loves to puzzle every winter, and he will sit there and do puzzles all the time. And so that was my strategy. I did a lot of puzzles. We probably did, I don't know, between 10 and 12 puzzles over the Christmas holidays, which, normally I find irritating because I'm like, this is taking too long. But no, it was actually very relaxing, very calming. And it was just nice to even just sit there and have some one-on-one time with my husband and just reconnect, and even time with my kids. They're all growing up, and they'll be leaving home soon. And so I just want to capture and take advantage of those moments that I have with them while I have them. And so, yeah, I really did enjoy it. There was obviously things that came up that I would have liked to not have to deal with, but it's life. You have life. Even when you set intentions for different seasons of your life, sometimes things come up, right? And so, I know for a lot of us coming through the holiday season, there's a lot of things that come out of that. Sometimes we have stressful family events. Sometimes there's financial strain. And just stepping into the new year, and this is one of the reasons why I really felt like we needed to talk about this topic, is because, you know, after a holiday or a season like that, there could be a lot that kind of sucks your joy,
Mhm.
right? Kind of, it's sometimes when you come through some seasons like this, especially if Christmas is a difficult time for you, it's like, how can you really step into pursuing joy on a regular basis and finding it even in the little things? And so, thanks for sharing about your sabbatical, Connie. But I do want to just jump into, how do we cultivate joy in our life? How do we find it? Like, why is it so elusive? Why does it seem so difficult sometimes for us to step into this? So, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, actually, I think sometimes when we think about pursuing joy, I think a lot of times we think we can create it for ourselves. And that's more the pursuit of happiness than the pursuit of joy, because joy doesn't isn't something we can create for ourselves. It's a gift from God that he gives to us freely, but we have to trust him, right? Like, and so when we're so busy looking at what we're going through, like for example, when I was sick, right? I was so
Mm-hmm.
busy focused on being sick that I wasn't connecting with God in the way that I wanted to during my sabbatical. And as a result, I lost a lot of joy over the holidays that I've now regained because I've reconnected with God in a very deep way. And it's amazing to me, just like the difference, right? And like I said,
Mm-hmm.
I learned a lot about myself, like that even though I know that joy comes from God, and even though I know that I should not disconnect myself from God when I'm sick, I still fall into those old patterns. And so I need to watch that. And that's a good thing to know about myself, right? That I do occasionally fall into old patterns. And then if I watch for them instead of just letting myself fall into them, not be on caution, then I can actually come out of it much quicker. And so that is like probably the biggest thing that I've been able to take away from being like from that time, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
just being more cautious and more careful, and I guess more observant about what I'm going through and and how I'm responding to it. Because
Right.
when I trust God and I like just walk with him, I have a lot of joy in my life and a lot of peace. And so I just need to stay there.
Yeah, I think one of the things you said early on is really key, which happiness and joy are not the same thing, right? And our
Hmm.
happiness is often, uh, dependent on our circumstance,
Yeah.
and our joy actually comes from God. Our joy is actually based on our trust and our ability to believe that God has good in store for us. And even if our circumstances are bad, we do have this sense. I know it's easier for you and I, Connie, because we're like strong believers in the Lord, but you, even in the times of difficulty and, craziness and horrible circumstances, there is this solid foundation where we are like, well, we can't see it right now, but we do know that God's going to come through for us. And we can go to him, we can bring our stuff to him, and he actually does exchange it for joy. And the Bible describes it as like joy unspeakable and full of glory, right? And he also
Hmm.
says, like, when we bring our burdens to him, he gives us the peace that surpasses all understanding. And I've experienced that personally, right? Like, the circumstances surrounding me are so extreme, so difficult. From the outside looking in, people would be like, why aren't you losing your mind? And, I'm
Hmm.
just like, at peace and contented knowing that I might not know the answers. I might not know how this is going to work out. I don't know the how, but I do know the who,
I
right?
like
And
that.
so when you can trust that, and when you have that sense of belief, then that's where the joy comes from, which I think is huge when we can distinguish that, see the difference, right? Because, like you said, happiness is something we create on our own, right?
Hmm.
And that's why I think a lot of us, you know, go through life miserable because we can't create it on our own. right? Yeah. So I so
There's
resonate with
one
what you said.
there was one other thing I wanted to like say that you were like hitting on, and that's one of my favorite songs is called Joy in the Morning. And one of the lines is, if it's not good yet, God's not done. And
Hmm.
it's so key, like to what Laura was saying. Like that's why you can't focus on your circumstance, because if it's not good, then God's not done with that situation yet. He's still working things out because his goal is for our good. His goal is never for us to remain in those situations. And so if it's not good yet, he's not done. And so if we're stuck in the pursuit of happiness instead of the pursuit of joy, then we're going to be like just focused on the fact that, oh, this isn't where it should be. This is not cool. This is not good. Instead of focused on, well, God has something better. It's just not here yet. And that gives you hope and joy, and that in ways
Hmm.
that holding on to your circumstance never will.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I also thought was pretty powerful is when you said it's the who, not the how. Because I think we as humans always want to know the how of things. And a
Right.
lot of times it is as simple as who, right? It's
Mhm.
not how it has to be done, it's who can do it for us or who can do it with us. And
Yeah.
so I liked how you said that.
I was thinking too about my holidays and my sabbatical too, right? Like, one of the ways that I find that God restores joy to me is by being in the moment. And
Mm,
I had to do that a lot over the Christmas season, was just kind of let all the stuff go, all the things go, all the to-dos, let it go and just be more present in the moment. And when I can do that, when I'm successful at doing that, I have so much more joy, right? Because I'm not worried about what's going to happen tomorrow. I'm not worried about what I need to do to achieve this thing or that thing, and there's actually another scripture that goes along with that where, God tells us to bring all of our worries to him through prayer and leave them there, and he will replace it with joy, right? And it's like, and he says, why worry about something, like just focus on today, right? Just
mm,
focus on the now. And so when I can do that, when I can just, let everything else go and just focus on, like, who am I with right now? I'm just going to focus on that person. Or what am I doing right now? I'm going to
mm.
enjoy the little moments, even like just sitting at my coffee table and having a hot cup of hot lemon water. That's my favorite, right? Like, who would think that that would be enjoyable? But the times where I can just sit there and be like, take that sip of hot lemon water, I'm just like, oh, this is heaven, right? Like, people might think I'm crazy, but honestly, like, just being in that moment and being peaceful and like just being aware, right? And even last night with my kids in my kitchen, right? Just goofing around, being playful and fun and being present to them. Whereas, I might be like, oh, excuse me, I need to make dinner or whatnot. It's just like, to take advantage of those moments and be present and just enjoy, right?
Mm.
Allow the joy of God, of, of the joy of the moments that he's given me. Because if we're too focused forward, we miss everything that's happening right here. We miss the people, excuse me. We miss the blessings. We even miss his presence sometimes, right? Like
Mm.
he's here, his peace is here, or whatnot, but we like skim right past it because we're too focused on, getting to the next thing.
That's true. I think for me, I think another thing that brings me joy, outside of just being in this moment is just when I'm being intentional, right?
Mm,
Like intentionally caring for my husband, intentionally caring for my friends. I find that gives me so much joy. Just
yeah.
like knowing that that little bit of effort has helped them in a huge way is amazing to me. And I think that like that goes back to who God's made me to be. But I've just been struck by how much joy I get from just those little moment, like those little times of effort. And it makes me want to do it more, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I was also reminded this morning, last week I actually had a pretty rough week. Um, I
Mm,
haven't told you all the reasons why yet, but it was pretty tough. And when I came to the end of the week, I was just at the end of myself, and I was so disappointed in myself because I hadn't met all my goals. I didn't meet all my pre preconceived expectations for myself. I felt like I had failed in a lot of ways, and I was so physically and emotionally depleted that I just was, like, losing it, like, bawling and just feeling so down on myself, and my husband said, like, "Laura, you're too hard on yourself," right? And the expectations that I had of myself, nobody else had those for me.
mhm,
I had put those on myself, and it was bringing me down. It was robbing me of joy, and, um so one thing I'm learning in this season is to not take myself so seriously, right? And to be okay to take the pressure off, right? Because I am a person who, would be considered a high achiever, or I like to be productive, I like to be efficient, I like to um, see results, I like to see things come together quickly, and to recognize that that's not always how life works, and sometimes it happens in stages, and I need to, like, take that pressure off myself because I don't have to keep the same pace 24 hours of every day, right? Like, that's not what we were meant to do. And so just to even recognize that in myself, and when I see that kind of rising up, like, just to be like, nope, I have grace in this moment. And I had to have grace on myself on Sunday. Like, I just was like, I'm done. And I literally slept most of the day. Like, I needed the rest. I needed to just take some time out. And when I got up, I was refreshed and I was able to have joy again. I was able to engage again. I was able to be in the moment again. But sometimes I know for myself, I'm sure there's some people listening to this can relate, is that we have these unrealistic expectations of ourselves. We put so much pressure on ourselves, and when we don't achieve it, we feel like we've maybe have failed or fallen short, and it just literally sucks any joy out of even the tasks that we're trying to do, right? Because a lot of the things that I was doing last week should have actually brought me a great amount of joy, but they actually had the opposite effect because I wasn't seeing them through the right perspective.
mhm.
And I think perspective is huge.
I would agree. I have seen a shift in my perspective this week in the same, almost in the same idea as you, in the fact that there have been unexpected things that have kind of interfered with my plans sometimes this week, but all of them have like brought me additional joy just by them actually happening. And they've actually added to my life, and it was when I looked at my goals today, I was like, oh, but then I was like, no, it has been a great week. Why am I immediately like, oh, because I didn't achieve everything that I had written down I should? I've had an
Mhm,
amazing week. And so then I was just able to rebound really quickly because it's a shift in perspective. So when I go to make my goals for the next week, I'm definitely going to keep in mind to make space for the unexpected because if I don't, then I'm just going to continually feel like I'm failing, right?
mhm,
And I'm not failing. I'm actually having a really good time right now and I'm actually moving forward and I may not be going at the pace I want to be, but maybe I'm just like wanting too much from me, you know?
mhm.
Like you were saying, sometimes we expect too much of ourselves.
Actually, it was funny yesterday. I got home from my errands yesterday, and my husband says to me, "So, how was your day?" And I was like, "Oh," kind of grumpily grunting, and he's like, "Oh, what happened? Like, what bad things happened today?" And I sat there and I was like, "Well, nothing." He's like, "What? If if nothing bad happened in your day, why did you have such a bad day? And I was just like, I don't know. It's just like it all comes down to perspective, right?
Mhm.
When I he actually confronted me with that question, it was like, actually nothing bad happened today. I actually had a pretty good day. But in the
Mhm.
moment, I was feeling like, "Oh, I just wanna get out of this day." Well, why? It was actually a good day, right? So how many times is it just our perspective? Like,
Mhm.
we're allowing some negative emotion or some negative feeling to override even our personal like, reality, right? I didn't
Yeah.
have a bad day, but for some reason inside, I was feeling like I was having a bad day, and it's like, "What? Where's this
Yeah.
coming from? I want this to go bye-bye." Right? So, yes, I have to catch myself. It's just like, life is actually not terrible. Like, there's good things, and let's start focusing on those good things, which is why it's like, even developing this practice of celebrating small wins each day, small victories, right?
And having
And I'll use,
gratitude.
yeah, and I'll
Like
use one quick example from my life. Like, we've chosen to homeschool our youngest son again. He used to be homeschooled, and then with my health crisis, I had to send them back to school. But he's struggled ever since he's gone back to school with being bullied. And at first, the school was supporting him, but now it's not working, and he comes home crying every day and begging me to homeschool him. And so we finally made the decision to bring him home. And these last 3 weeks, it's been crazy. Like, it's a learning curve bringing that back into the home, shifting schedules, like shifting everything. And it's kind of been crazy, right?
Mhm.
But at the same time, as crazy as it's been, I'm starting to see my son smile again. I'm seeing his broken spirit heal. I'm seeing him getting along with his brothers better. I'm seeing him more motivated and more excited for life. So to see these things in my son, like, no, I can overlook how difficult it has been making some of these shifts and some of these changes because I
Mhm.
see so much joy and happiness in him and so much growth in him in the last 3 weeks that I'm like, "You know what? It's okay, the difficulty, because we'll get over this hump. We'll figure out how things should look. We'll iron out our schedules. We'll figure it out." So even in that, like, because I could be like, "Oh, these last 3 weeks have been so tough," right? But no, I'm gonna focus on what is it doing for my son? It's making him come alive again,
Mhm.
right? His little his little gentle spirit is, like, just thriving, and that's what I wanna see. That's what I want to, have happen for my son, and so when I focus on that, I have so much joy about what's happening right now. If I only focus on how hard it's been and how crazy things have been to try to figure this out, well, then that sucks the joy out, right? So, once again, comes back to perspective.
Yeah, and I think that also comes back to gratitude. You're so thankful for that time that that
Mhm.
he's been able to grow and he's been able to shift that if we keep our mind on what we're thankful for, it helps us focus on the good, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
think about all the good things in my life, and it's hard to stay negative when you have actually good things in your life, right?
Mhm.
And if you stay focused on that and you're thankful for them, it helps you a lot to keep that joy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we could talk about this forever. There's just so much. It's such a
Mm.
a it's such a wide, uh, broad subject, but I think we've kind of given a good sense of, what it means to have joy,
Mhm.
how you can cultivate that joy, how you can pursue that joy and find it every day.
Yeah.
And so for everyone who listens to this podcast, our hope and our desire is that, you find that joy in those everyday little moments of your life and that you recognize that it's not based on your circumstance, it's not based on what's happening in your life, the challenges that you're facing. even in those moments, you can have joy, and it's not going to be created on your own by your own means or your own efforts, but it comes from God. It's actually joy comes from God. So spend time, just seeking Him, give Him your burdens, and He always replaces it with joy. And so I don't know, Connie, if you had any last things you wanted to share to those listening before we end for today, but
I think we've got covered it pretty well already.
all right. Well, I thank you all for listening today. If you want to hear more about joy, we did record a webinar earlier this month. You can check it out on our website at nosafoundation.com or on our YouTube channel. And if you don't want to miss any of those events, you can subscribe to our YouTube videos, or also join us the first Thursday of every month for our webinars live on Zoom. Yeah, we'd love to have you join us. So uh, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the NOSA Unleashed podcast. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. Join us next time on the NOSA Unleashed podcast.